Welcome again to another installment of Under the Hat, where mom needs to be a little more framed. This is my mom, Sarah Poff, who's been an artist and so many other things throughout her life, and we thought we'd do an interview series with some of her art and inspirations, because I wanted to know, and this way it forces her into a format, but you'll get blessed by it too. Today we're as in most of our art, is we have a little normal art, but we have a lot of extra art.
We do.
We have a prop. I'll let the artist talk about the prop. And today we're going to talk more about storytelling and inspiration and those type of things. So tell me about your prop.
My prop. Are you talking about these props? I like my hat.
Hey, we can start there. We can start there for sure.
It's not my favorite red hat because I lost my favorite red hat on the Continental Divide, but that's a story for another day.
Okay.
This is just a hat that's been around a while.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to do is I like to research and do genealogy. I like to paint. I like to tell stories. I like to do a little of all of it. But then I like to bring it to a completion, whether it be a sculpture or whether it be a painting or whether it be a collection of a photo album. This is one that I've put together with the pictures I've collected from all the family over the years. Different times, different places, and they have stories to go with them, and I'd like to tell some of those stories today.
Now, we'll definitely get into some stories for sure, because I know some of them, but you've gone to classes for storytelling. You've developed a storytelling background.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, because it's more complicated than getting up and saying ABC.
So I was doing some programs for Mid-Continent Library, and I walked into one of the library branches, and they had this leaflet, and they were like, how about a storytelling certificate? So I started reading down through that, and I thought, well, I already do a bunch of that. Let's see what I can do to refine it. Yeah. And I think one of the things I remember the most when I was trying to get some of it down, because they would give you classes in each level, they pushed you to a new level on your storytelling. And this guy says what you want to do is you want to get your story in your head, whatever story it is you're telling, whether it be your story or one that you're telling that comes from another source. Till you can say it forward and backwards. It doesn't matter where somebody, asks a question, that you can still come back to it. That it is so personal with you that you can just act like it was totally yours, even if it's an ancestor's story, not your story. So I kind of feel like sometimes I almost become the people when I'm telling it, and hopefully I get the details right. I try to.
I've seen your prep. Yes, you become them. It is great to see my mom not be my mom for a few minutes. It's fun. And some of the stories outside the family ones, because we'll get to those too eventually, like you've researched some wild women and some really good women. And you become a little bit that.
I do.
But it goes back to you've embraced the story, because there's so many stories that have good. And we forget about that sometimes in the world today.
Well, and I try to pick out women that I believe in what they did. They had courage through their stories. One of the people I do is Olive Boone. I picked her out because she's actually kin to my husband. So she'd be kin to you too, but not me. Only me by marriage. And so I loved her story and how she grew up in the frontier. She came to a frontier, and she had 11 children before Missouri even became a state. Whoa, so the kids still ask me sometimes when I tell that story, they're like, did she go to the hospital? I was like, there weren't any hospitals around back then. And then there's another one that's really good to tell, and it's about a lady whose husband got the gold fever. My husband got the gold fever. Her name was Eliza Brooks. And she received a letter. He'd been out there a couple of years, and he and his family had set up a business out there, and he had said, you come. I found gold. My brothers and I and Dad have a store out here, which is where most people make their money out there. You bring those kids forward. And so it's a reminiscence that her son wrote about their journey out there and all the things that happened to that lady. She could not keep up with the wagon train. So we think about how the people stayed together and made it out there. Well, she didn't get to stay together because she couldn't keep up with the wagon train. She had 6 children. The oldest was a girl, and she was 13, and her boys were 11. So they could not keep up. So it's a story about the struggles she went to, but the success she had. Oh, did I tell the end then? Almost. but the stories of courage that she had along the way are just incredible.
Well, and that's the thing about a story of courage and of endurance. Like, just because we get to the end, the heartache and the hills and the back and forth. And I go back in our world today when we think and we need to look up at people, we have so many from our history and sometimes even from our lineage that we can look for hope, inspiration, and like, hey, I got that same blood running through my veins. Like, I don't know where or how.
That. You need
it got personal.
It got personal.
Well, so I know some of this book. I know some of the stories of the book. I know so many of the photos, but why don't we take a few minutes, because I'm going to do this again. This is artwork too. The organization, the presentation, like, that's part of art. And sometimes the structure is something that we have to look at and see, oh, she's going to take it closer. She's more, there's that professionalism kicking in and whole other levels too. It's things that we think about, and it's not just hodgepodge. You spent time, effort, and consideration to make it what it is. So,
one of them I even printed off with the wrong cover on it. I printed off another branch of the family's cover on the front of one of mine the other day. I was like, oh no, I guess I have to keep that one for myself.
Well, I'm like a good artist, because if I remember right, when you used to teach, you would make them use pen to draw in, where they would make their mistakes right. Sometimes you gotta make a mistake and people just aren't gonna notice it. We'll call them Poff hints. I don't know, we'll come up with something. But like, there's so many things that people won't realize unless you tell them. So is there a story or something we can dive into and then dissect? Because that's what I like doing.
That's what you like doing? Well, for right now, I think we're gonna skip my parents. Because there's a lot of stories there. They're pretty personal at this point, but maybe I would do one.
Ooh.
And that is, you see right there, that little guy in front of the log cabin. My daddy was born in a log cabin, just like Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
He used to remind us of that often, that he was born in that cabin.
And my addition to kind of remind you of the value and the importance of that is, like, it's so removed. What? He wasn't, like, there wasn't air conditioning, there wasn't lights. I mean, some stories about how they got electricity and whatnot just instantly hit my mind of the amount of change we've had just in a generation or so.
Well, and he always referred to, he was like what they called a blue baby back then. And so I'm thinking he just didn't breathe quite as quickly as some babies, and of course he wasn't in the hospital, but the women of the community came and helped deliver him, and they had an old potbelly stove in the cabin, and so one of the ladies went and laid down behind the potbelly stove, because it was in January, and she laid really close to him and took care of him, because my grandmother wasn't quite up to par then, and that, he says, that helped save his life.
So now, the philosophy storytelling aspect hits me hard here. The women of the community, like, it's not just that they told the story and someone randomly heard what to do. They kept each other in check. They helped each other.
Right.
They rallied for the cause and for the people around them, which is,
They did.
I mean, like, so much of your mission statement of passing on, and I mean, like, this is the things, and these stories are all around us. Oh.
That same lady, or one of those ladies of the community, she brought him fried chicken when she had fried chicken, and she always gave Dad a drumstick because that was his favorite.
Okay, so that was his favorite. I was like, is that why is his favorite?
It was his favorite. Sometimes even when you were older and you were living with us and Dad was living with us, he wanted the drumstick.
Yeah,
he got the drumstick.
He got the drumstick. And I think that's the beauty of family dynamics. Sometimes we think of patriarch, and all these things. It wasn't that he forced us to give him the drumstick. We all wanted him to do the drumstick. Like, he lit up every time.
He did.
It was the story, and connecting it in different ways. You know, I've probably heard that story a time or two, but it's been a while, and you know, the sweetness of others just stays alive.
So there's so many stories that can be told here, but you know, I think some of the older generational stories might be better to tell. Oh, you know, do you want me to go, or are you gonna go?
Go ahead.
So
this is displaying you.
Right here, that's my grandfather, Oliver Tucker, and he was drafted for World War I. He did not serve very long because he had some damage done to his eyes during his training time. But what I think about with him is he rode the train back to Seligman, Missouri, which was a number of miles from where he was living. His parents were living at the time, or I should say his father was deceased at that time. And it was winter. He got off the train and it was winter. And he found someone who would give him a horse, rent him a horse, let him borrow a horse. And he rode back into that Roaring River Valley, because Seligman's up high, and he rode into that Roaring River Valley. And he was frozen to the saddle when he arrived home. The family had to help him unfreeze so he could get down and go in and warm up. And he lived to tell the story. He lived to tell the story. And I think that's one of the things, is he lived to tell the stories and to pass on to the next generation. And that's part of what we are about.
Yeah. Endurance and speaking up too. I mean, I encounter lots of people that, it takes them a minute to find that family story, but they have them.
They do. I think that's, people will stop me and they'll ask me like, well, you just have the stories. And I'm like, well,
Time development, retelling.
It did. And I used to
art.
write my grandmother, my Granny Tucker, I called her Granny. I used to write her, even after you were born, I was writing her. And she, because she lived until you were 6 or 7, I think. I think 7. And
a little older than that, because Mary Ellen was a couple.
Oh no,
Right?
Mary Ellen was 3.
Yeah, so
So you would be like 9 or something.
Yeah.
So he remembers her. But she finally told me one time, she says, if you keep those questions coming my way, I don't know what I'm going to do, because you're going to know all my secrets. That's what she told me. She just said, so that brings up a story. Here's what she told me after she said that. So I asked her what her first date was.
Nice.
This is the pious grandmother that
Yes. We got to set some things up. So what time period are we talking about? Because we've just skipped a few.
She got married in 26.
Okay, so before 26.
So before
what
26.
dating life was like by a strict, pious woman. Was she Southern Baptist? I forget.
Well, I don't know about then.
Okay,
I assume they probably did, but I know she was. When she joined the church later.
And this is Granny who thought that if you had your picture taken, a little bit of your soul was captured.
Yes.
We're talking
she
that mentality and that time frame.
Right. Yeah. One time I was at her house and I needed a knife. I was in college and I needed a knife, and she looked at me. She says, "Well, I can't give it to you." And I'm like. She says, I got an extra one, but can't give it to you. And I said, why not? And she said, because it might cut our relationship. She said, you go find a penny in your purse and I'll give it to you for a penny. So it was like that. So what she told me was her first date, I don't know who the guy was. She didn't really tell me that. But what she said is we went to that church, a church out there. It was a Pentecostal church. Mm-hmm. And she said, we went, and I was like, oh, well, good, you went to church. Oh, she said, no, it wasn't like that, because, some people back then practiced getting happy in the Lord, mm-hmm. and some of them rolled down the aisles when they got happy with the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Conservative woman, not used to that, singing strictly from the hymn book, maybe just a piano, nothing more than that.
In a church where they churched you, if you went certain places on Saturday night, they might church you.
Because Gramps, her son, would talk about that of getting churched, and the idea was that you would
didn't get church.
He didn't get church, but this was the practice.
Right.
If you went out dancing, which think about dancing during that time period, or if you went to the movie theater and watched a movie, you were not allowed back into the congregation before you got up in front of the whole congregation and confessed your sins, and then they would welcome you back.
And said you wouldn't do it again.
Very different cultural dynamic than we experience now within our church environment. But yes.
Right.
So definitely an extreme experience for a conservative woman of her time and stature.
Oh yes, but she got her points across, let me tell you. I love her dearly, but she got her points
this is how stories inspire stories. And man, the suggestion I would make to families is sit around, start. You may be so surprised of what happens because the way they connect. So this is Granny. Granny was old when I was around, but I have memories and stories. And Granny made the best drink ever. So I would go over and like, oh, I want some Kool-Aid. And she's like, oh, I don't got Kool-Aid. I'll make something up for you. She would take Jell-O and put the Jell-O in water, chill it just a little bit, and that was my Kool-Aid. Well, that was amazing. Like, it was so good, and I only got it from Granny. You know, the best thing ever, you know, and no one else did this. And even my friends were like, what? Your great-grandma does what? Yes. So I have this distinct memory of a pitcher that usually got mixed in, and a metal cup that would get poured in lots of times. And that was my granny's
Those
love.
are the coldest drink out of those.
That was my granny's love for me. Like, I just thought I was the specialist thing ever. Well, come to find out when I grow up and whatnot, I believe it was you, Mom, honestly, that spoiled it for me. Granny didn't have any Kool-Aid in the house, so she didn't know what to do, so she just did the Jell-O thing. Improvisational and just like, okay, how do I show my great-grandchild some love?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the memory, because like, it was that sweetness, and it was out of just improvisation.
And didn't I give you that?
Yes, I now have the jar,
Yeah.
and I may have gave it back, but the metal.
I don't think
cup.
you have the cup. I'll have to give you one back.
But yeah,
Because he's got the picture, the little picture.
Yeah, I have a
that
picture
she-
that just, I think back to my granny and her love for me.
Yeah, yeah. And you all shared Haley's comment.
Haley's comment.
Because she had seen it when she was a little kid.
That one, and the big one for me was when we would visit, because we did visit some, is I would lay on a cot or on the floor next to her, and she would lay on the couch.
She had caught.
Yeah, and we would just sit up and talk. But that was definitely of that side, that the Tucker and the Thompson side of the families were talkers to an extent, and we were just talking.
Yeah, well, and a lot of talk was about church and religion and, those kind of things, that's for sure.
And especially in now modern audience, I like to add, it wasn't a disconnected faith, it wasn't a forced faith, it was how we are living and how we are enjoying life and how we should enjoy life.
Mm-hmm. You had to be a little careful about some topics.
Yes.
Like dancing. I didn't go to any dances except for the school dances. But I had to be a little careful about that because, of course, she's remembering being church. Not her church, but who knows? She didn't tell me that who she was, but I don't think so. She was too straight-laced.
Oh, well.
Oh, and then the painting I've just been working on, Granny and my grandfather, Gramps is what we call him. So we have Gramps Oliver and Gramps Jack. Gramps Oliver is my grandfather. Gramps Jack is my father, his grandfather. And Granny took this horse all the way up to the top of the big Boston Mountains, which they aren't technically mountains, but down there in Roy River Valley, they certainly look like mountains, and they're called the Boston Mountains. So she had never done something like that, and my grandfather was at work one day, and she says, I'm just going to do it. And so she just got on her horse, and that's kind of how she was. She, she figured out how to do it. She figured out how to make things happen for the family.
Strong women. I'm glad you have dove so deep in those wells. That's great to hear.
So, yep. So you want to,
there's
there's so many stories we could tell.
Well, and as you flip and maybe find the next one of the things that I want to talk about is the effort in the in-between. Because as artists, sometimes we get inspired early. I should put my hand out where you can see it, early in the process and late in the process. But it's the betweens that's the hard part. It's finding the stories. It's writing your grandmother so many times that she's like, you're going to know all my secrets. It's the work and effort that we have to put in that so many people think it just comes naturally. It's no. It takes effort. And I think about some other new ones in our family of like, well, I didn't get it on the first try. It's impossible. No. I think the first few books you made, and while they were good, I'm glad they've improved. Just seeing the organization that these have, and
I have a family tree in here. Let's see, this is the family tree for my dad's side.
And don't let them see too close; they might get all our secrets.
Oh, all of our secrets. And then I'll show you Mom's in a minute. But this is that is my great grandfather Tucker. His name was Francis, and his wife. I call her Emily because I've seen her name Emily on a number of the census, but a lot of the family call her Emma. So I'm not sure. But I went to my uncle's house, my great uncle Everett's house, And he actually took the pictures out of the photograph, the frame, because it's big, those big old farm frames they usually call them. And he took it out of there and let me take pictures of it. So that's not this one has a frame around it, but I have some that don't have frames around it. And I actually spoke in Monette, which is near there, last weekend, and this lady brought me a new picture of Emily.
Mm-hmm. That's fun.
I'll have to do that story later. I'm still trying to figure out, because she wrote on the back. It's actually got her signature on it. She wrote on the back. It's a little sad, but I think my cousin Carol and I just about got that story figured out. Oh, and you're talking about writing, and sometimes it takes a while. So this one right here,
under our hat,
that is Granny's grandparents, Pretty's, and they lived in North Carolina. And Granny never got to see them because she was born in the Oklahoma Territory. Now, some people argue with me that it's the Indian Territory. She was born out in Oklahoma before it became a state. And by the people I believe to be the best genealogists, historians, they say Oklahoma because they say that part of Oklahoma wasn't Indian. It wasn't Indian Territory in 1904. So she was born out there.
So this is where I love, where history and family history collide in so many different ways. Like, we are not removed from history. We are creating history. We're a part of history. We have to deal with history. And I mean, like, knowing those things is just fun. Scary, but fun.
I actually remember Granny talking about it because she never got a birth certificate until she was older. And when she was starting to think about retiring, and all of a sudden she needs a birth certificate. And she's trying to figure out what to do. Luckily, she had an older brother named Tom, because they wanted someone who was at least 12 years old when she was born, because those kind of people remember more things. That's what they said. And he had to sign on the back, you know, that he was there and that he had witnessed, and you know, those kind of things, so that she could get her Social Security now.
And legal things are important, and I'm glad for legal things, but that's still hilarious. I have to have a 12-year-old person sign off that I am really alive.
Yeah, he's 12 years old. And you know what? She was born in a storm cellar. Now, so she's born in Oklahoma, in the territory, you know, of Oklahoma. And she's born in a storm cellar. Now, why was she born in a storm cellar? Well, you know, when a tornado comes out there, you don't always know ahead of time. There wasn't TV. So her mother was afraid there was a storm coming, and there just wasn't much place. It was just flat out there, flat and dry and all. And so they went down to the storm cellar, and Granny decided to be born there. Down in the storm cellar. So they lived out there for, I don't know, a couple decades.
Yeah.
That's a big long story too. So we're just kind of doing an overview, right? Tonight we'll be running out of time if we go and talk.
Well, and that's some of it too. Seeing the process, I think, is important, because when you can see Bob Ross and learn how to paint a picture, but there are so many other art styles and other ways of creativity and passing on a legacy that take different forms. And some of this format is too just having a little fun with going and hitting it in different ways. And I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. Maybe one more story, and then I'm going to push you on values.
Oh, okay.
From our legacy.
Well, I was just thinking about what you were talking about the first time I put together books. So I was so excited that I had driven 13 hours to see my family's, not my family, but to go to Mississippi, where my grandmother had lived for 100 years. My people had lived there, and my grandmother was the last one to leave, and she left when she got married, like, I think it was like 1913. This is my grandmother on the Thompson side. And I came back, and my mother-in-law went into the bedroom. I guess she decided I must like genealogy if I drove 13 hours to see where my family lived. So she goes in the bedroom. She says, "Come in here, Sarah." She pulls it out from under the bed, and she had as many pictures and papers, more pictures, because I got one little bitty picture of Mississippi. And Granny and Alex's mom had this box filled with those pictures of the old family. Now, they're not in here. It's too many pictures. I'll have to have another book for that sometime. But that's when I started I learned about that color copy machines had become bigger and better, and that if you took a colored picture of a black and white, that it showed more definition.
Right.
And so I started doing that. Well, I'd wait till they have a sale. So then I'd gather up the money, or sometimes my dad would give me the money, and I would go buy, go print off a bunch of copies of those. And then I would like stack them. Do you remember all over the kitchen floor?
Mm-hmm.
They're all over the kitchen floor and the living room floor.
Oh,
And I was stacking them in the little stacks because I needed 10 of this and 10 of this and 10 of this. And oh my gosh, I got so lost. I thought I was going to croak. And so I'm so glad that I can like put it in the machine now. And I store my pictures on Google, the JPEGs that I have of these. And even that was a hard thing, that, getting them into a JPEG form. And then now I got them in this format that I can just go and print. The other day I did some for my Tucker cousin's kids, sons getting married. And so I just left out, went through and left out Mom's side because that wouldn't be of interest to him. But now he's a 5th generation Ozarkian, and his brother is also 5th generation, and his brother's expecting a little boy. So that means we have 6 generations of our family that have lived in the Ozarks.
Interesting. One of the things, and we've pointed out a couple times within this, is the growing dynamic that you have to be as an artist to adapt to the new thing.
Yes.
Like whether it be storytelling, live, internet live, or recorded, different levels of studios, research, development, and redoing art. Because some of this has been redone in different ways and formats. Hard process, but also is beautiful if you have the story. I think about some of my art that I've made and remade and characters and things, and it's always fun to go back. Now it took some time to get used to going back, because I was the type, if I didn't get it right the first time, it was trash. It took forever to get over it. I still have some of that problem, but it's beautiful to go back and revisit and then tweak and change and seeing your art become more.
Well, and that's when you said that about it taking a long time. So when I went to my great uncle Everett's farm, and he got those pictures out for me and took them out of the frames for me to take, I was actually in photography club in high school. So I started this journey of taking pictures of other people's items, because I learned that not everybody can have that picture. There's too many family members, or even items that are important to the family. I can have the story and I have a picture of the item. I might not get the item, but I can still carry the legacy forward with that picture. And so this book started, that was like 1974, spring of 1974.
That's what I was going to say, because you took the photograph stuff. And didn't you do a round of self-development where you?
Oh yeah, I did.
Because it's not that we're the phone that we're recording this on. It was hard work and learning that hard work.
Yeah, I learned how to do a 35 millimeter and all that, and then I had kids and my husband took over, and then now we have digital. Yeah. I love digital, and if you ever follow me on Facebook, I have an art gallery of Multimedia-Storyteller Sarah Poff, and I post pictures in there because. I don't know what else to do with them. I just have a lot of fun doing it. And some people will say, you should print that one out. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I don't know what to do with that if I printed it out. My walls are already covered with all that kind of stuff I've done.
Yeah, there are
I just love doing it.
Of art within and her place.
Yep. All right, so what is it you want to talk about now?
We could do another story, or maybe zoom in a little closer to the... Maybe we wrap up and talk about some of the value, because I know
let's talk about that.
Part of the mission statement, part of me wanting to do this is the relating it to the values, and I know we have all sorts of values throughout our family and whatnot. What do you think is one of the values that storytelling helps the most with?
Well, I think I have to, slide this into genealogy. Because what I've learned and read, and I was researching for a genealogy club. My principal said you need to have a purpose for this. Why would you do this in an elementary school? And I came across an article, and what the article said is, we're going to have hard times. No matter who you are, you have good times, you have hard times. You're just going to have some of that, and so you need to be prepared for that. And if we can tell the stories of these people that we learned about their stories and how they survived, how my father survived birth because of the people around him, And we can survive whatever. You know, whatever we have to go through, we can help. And sometimes that help might mean that, you know, it's time to go home and see the Lord. I mean, that time will come. But our deal is to help the next generations learn the value of our relationship with Jesus and hard work. And Grandma Thompson always said, doesn't matter what you do as long as you're honest. You know, you got to be an honest, hard worker. And I don't care if you're digging ditches, as long as you're an honest, hard worker and you love the Lord. That, you know, those were kind of her things. It's about our faith and our carrying on. And I told my daughter when we were going through COVID, I was like, my grandmother, she had twins during the Spanish flu. And both of those twins made it.
Wow.
The doctor says you go out and you sit on your front porch. She has a screened-in front porch. And you sit out there like 30 minutes or so every day, even if it is cold. It'll be good for their lungs. So she did that. And while she did that, she watched hearse after hearse after hearse carry bodies to the cemetery. So as she's trying to keep her babies from dying, she's watching that go on. And as we watched and were able to get together as a family, we had a Thanksgiving where you were, you know, one of them you were in the closet, not the closet. We opened up a car door to the closet because you thought you had been exposed. And then another one, we had a virtual Christmas or Thanksgiving with my daughter who lived across the state, and we still got together. You know, we still shared time with our family, and we shared that passing on of, you know, our values, our time together, our strength from our Lord and Savior.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna spin it a little bit my way too, just because, you know, I'm the interviewing. I think about the relentless spirit. You know, that yes, it gets told to me through the stories, but there's that. There's something else of like, well, it's not just the stories. It's I have that same blood. I have that same mentality. And it is an encouragement hearing that story. And it's an encouragement keeping those stories alive of so many that we haven't talked about, but that we know and we laugh about and keep alive. And the hard things we've gone through just in our lifespans. Like, it's like, oh, okay, this is nothing new to our family. Well, let's go again. And it's that breath of fresh air of, yes, another round will come, but I'm more than this. And I love that my Savior is more than this world, this life, this existence. And one day I'll finally like, oh, I got through, Lord, thank you.
I know, I think about that. You know, when I go through a hard spell, you know, I do think about that. I was like, okay, God, I can make it till it's time to go home. So
there will be relief, and maybe we'll spin it poorly, but you know, the healing from the garment, the underneath his wings, because Hebrew, I know Hebrew. We're gonna jump. So the healing of the garment that Jesus had, the lady that had a blood problem, and the healing in the wings is the same word. The outer part of the garment and a wing is the same thing.
Oh.
So maybe ours is under our hat that we're all under. We just keep on going forward and trying to have fun. I know. We hope you have a little fun as the year you go with our journey with us. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.